Good morning, everyone. Microphone check, screen check. Looks like everything is working correctly. Question mark? Yes, okay. Always like to double check, make sure I'm on the right side of things here, make sure everything's working properly. I think we're good to go. All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, Vicky, how's it going? Brad, everyone else so far, good morning. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to rest up and get ready for the day ahead and all that fun stuff. After a slight day off for me, taking care of a few things here at home base, but should be ready to rock and roll for today. Hopefully yesterday you had a great day. Looks like there was a decent amount of movement at least. Not sure when. I honestly, I haven't really had a chance to look at the charts too much, so we'll dig in. Hey, Steven, how's it going? Just a quick note for you all, before we jump in the right side of the screen there, make sure to read through the morning prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside of there. And then, of course, if you're watching on the YouTube side of things, it does have between like a 5 and 30 second delay, which will definitely impact the timeliness of what I may be talking about at any given moment. Also, I just want to take a second, like we do every day, to thank all of our new members, subscribers, Academy students, VIPs, and everyone in between. Welcome to the SSFTG fam. I'm super excited to have you all on board. If you aren't part of the SSFTG fam yet, there are a lot of different ways, but the easiest way is to join up as a YouTube member with the join button below the stream. Gets you in the chat room and the YouTube community board, stock and crypto chart posts, all that fun stuff, and a bit more behind the scenes and what's going on. Of course, if you want to understand how we do everything, then you can check out the Day Trading Academy along with everything else that's over waiting for you at ssftg.com. So whether you're here for the first time or the 1000th, good morning and welcome. I hope you're all ready to rock and roll alongside of me today, analyzing these crazy markets of ours. Let's take a look at some news, take a look at some charts, see what all is going on today. I know it's kind of weird. It's like crude oil inventories today, but Monday wasn't a holiday. Well, technically Monday was a holiday, it's just nothing was closed. so some of the news announcements are still pushed off, the inventories being one of them. But before we get into that, don't forget to grab your morning DP levels. Those are posted for you in the major 7. NASDAQ, S&P, gold, crude oil, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. That was a mess from the start. Let's try it again. NASDAQ, S&P, gold, crude oil, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. There we go. It's a race every time. We just got to make sure those shoes are laced up. That's all. Like I said, as far as the news calendar is concerned, there's not a whole lot going on today once we hit that 8:30 period. But everything is kind of shifted off because of Monday's holiday, and it kind of messed with things a little bit. But looking at the news in its entirety, at 8:30 we had the initial jobless claims. That forecast was 319,000. They also had the PPI for September. And that was really it for this morning. As we go into 10 o'clock, we do have the FOMC member Bostic speaking, but it's a medium news announcement, nothing crazy, until 11 o'clock, which is the crude oil inventories. I know it feels like it's a little bit off. Like I said, Monday was a holiday, technically. Everything got pushed off. The forecast for the inventories today is 0.702 million. If we're looking at the API, which I remembered this time to post below, we can see that the forecast for the API was a positive 0.14 right there. So they're forecasting a positive 0.14, but it came out at a positive 5.21. Now this time around on the inventories, they're forecasting a 0.7. So part of me is thinking like this might come out around like 6. It's definitely off enough to be around that 6 million mark. And if that's the case, it's definitely going to be seen as pretty bearish. Tell that to crude oil. There's not a whole lot else going on after that news announcement, though, at 11 o'clock, so things kind of quiet down afterward. We'll see where they want to go after that. I don't think crude oil nose is supposed to be bearish yet, but, I mean, it's running into some resistance. We'll get there in a second. Let's start off on the NASDAQ and work our way from there. Market, for the most part, is still creating a higher low. We haven't confirmed with a new high, and this vindictive, trappy top that happened over here is a bit of a concern. But the sellers, well, they couldn't get the job done, right? They couldn't follow through all the way, right? I mean, at least not down to a new low. Now, if we look at the overall rotation from the first bottom to top, as well as the reversal point from top all the way down to bottom, we already understand or have an understanding that this initial pullback was kind of gobbled up right out of the gates from the buyers, right? They weren't shy about that one. And it could be sellers taking profit or new buyers. It doesn't matter. A buy order is a buy order. This thing got gobbled up, and we can say buy orders because it stopped going down. So it's relatively straightforward then. Then when it came back, it bounced off of that, and, well, it continued on its way up towards the top right corner of the screen there, and started rotating higher. And when we had that break above the POC, that was the big kind of chink in the armor, right? That's when we finally realized, wait a minute, okay, something's wrong, right? The armor got hit, there's a big dent in it. Is that a little hole in the armor? Wait a minute here, something's up. That doesn't necessarily mean that the market has to go screaming higher from right here, but it does usually mean that, well, they're going to have a harder time breaking down to the lows. It's the same concept where if you were expecting an L1 to hold, and it doesn't, right, and it does this, it's not to say that it can't go back down to the lows again, but a lot of people got screwed first. So there's going to be a natural psychological response when it comes back. The same thing happens here, where we have a lot of sellers who were probably anticipating this trend to keep on going to the downside. Why would they doubt it? But when they hit the lows, it stopped dead in its tracks. The market rotated back up. A lot of sellers, guaranteed, were trying to rotate back into that and drive that back down to a new low. And it failed. So when it rotated back up to the highs and shut that whole move down, all of these sellers were basically proven wrong. Like, hey, you got to open your eyes a second, sellers. You got some problems. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it can't pull back first, but the only time that this would be a full-blown surprise would be if they broke down back through the lows again. Then we've got ourselves a massive, strong trend back to the downside, and it's off to the races. But that hasn't happened yet. We've got rising support continuing to hold the market up. We have falling resistance, which is just now starting to kind of break. And this would be an area of interest where, again, I don't want to buy way the heck up here. I might not have a choice, depending on what happens, but I would much rather buy on a nice little pullback. The thing is, this hasn't stopped going higher. So, I mean, that natural concern side of me from the NASDAQ perspective is thinking right out of the gates, this thing's probably going to flush through the floor, freak everybody out, and then V-bottom and go all the way back up to the highs and have one of the strongest bullish days we've had in weeks. Right? I mean, it seems to be kind of a typical scenario for the indexes, especially for the NASDAQ. We'll see how it wants to play ball, but there's some definite bullish context here. Looking at the S&P, we had a similar situation, but with a lot less trapping. The NASDAQ had all the traps on the lows and even traps over here. If we look on the S&P, they had a higher low even over here. So with this rotation back to the upside, a lot of sellers are thinking, okay, are they going to take it back down? Is this a wide rotation, or is this the possible overshoot and overcorrection? So there's a lot of concerns here on where this market's going to want to try to go. But remember, one of the big perks that we had for the S&P comparative to the others was how clean of a move this was compared to the NASDAQ, because the NASDAQ was so choppy and vindictive. This one, we had one of the most obvious wedges I think you could possibly ask for. I mean, it was crazy. And once we had that wedge breakout, what do we anticipate from the wedge breakout? Well, we've got the initial rally up. Are we going to continue with an impulse to the upside? Well, we'll know if they break inside of this, because that would invalidate that, which it did over here. So with that invalidation, then we have to be thinking, well, wait a minute here. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. Ooh, double bottom. That could be the case. It could also be that wave 2 was over here, and I mean, you could modify this a lot of different ways. But either way, this creates a scenario where we're still kind of in a corrective phase. We can see that none of these are showing us that we have a trend, an impulse, right? There's really strong breakouts in the middle, but then it collapses back in on itself. It's like an inflated balloon. Like it pops as soon as it gets under any pressure. Until we have some kind of impulse momentum, which they may be trying to get right now. This would be the first time that the trend buyers have actually had something going in their favor. I would really like them to break above the 44.08s, 44.10s to prove it. But, I mean, as long as we stay above 43.66.75, this may be the first time that we get an impulse rotation to try to get this thing going back to all-time highs, maybe. This is the first time that we've actually had a shot. All the other times have failed so far. So it's the first time again. The Redux edition. We'll see what they can do. Over on gold, I mean, holy crap. My fears and what we've been talking about for the last several days here, I feel, are still valid. This thing is about as sharp as a razor blade. And man, if you get your hand in the wrong spot, it's just going to get lopped off. This thing is brutal. Unbelievably vicious whips back and forth. And what do you want to bet? That pullback was to a POC. Almost a guarantee, right? I mean, it's got to be. If we go from the bottom all the way to the top, that's got to be a POC pullback. Yep, right there. Let me put my crosshair on it, just so you can see. There it is over there. All the way over to the tick. What? Oofta, as my northerners would say. We've got a heck of a test right there. How many people do you think, once we finally got this pop higher, rotated back down to break even, like, yeah, finally rallied back up. Okay, I'm not giving this thing back. Put my stop to break even. Slapped on the back of the hand just to watch it go screaming all the way back to the upside. What a move. So as far as the overall momentum goes, I mean, this is something that we've been talking about for a while, but it's been stuck in a range for a month and a half now, is the double-sided breakout to the upside based off of the mediating volume right in the middle there. So if you measure from the bottom to the middle and then project that back to the upside, that usually gives you an idea, plus about an L1 to L2 bracket off the highs of where the market is going to try to rotate up to. It's finally making its way up there in one of the most vindictive ways. I mean, man, the NASDAQ should take notes. That's impressive. But they got the POC retest to the tick, screaming all the way back up to the highs, and it's off to the races. The shorts had their chance to get out. I hope they used market if touched orders, because that's the only way they got out. And, well, now we're all the way back up to new highs again. We'll see what they want to do, but it feels like the shorts GTFO'd. On crude oil, we've got a continuation back to the upside, but again, there's some definite problems here. Not only the inventory suggesting that this should be a bearish day, but also from a structural perspective, there's a lot of trapping going on up here. This isn't looking very happy for crude oil. Yeah, that reload was crazy. That's unbelievable. Anyway, so, I mean, they came back, they retested, they got the top, and now they trapped and rotated down with this monster of a bear bar? Oof, man. I don't know, that doesn't give me the warm fuzzies. This feels like a lot of momentum for the bulls has kind of shifted, and they're looking for a deeper pullback. It doesn't mean the bull trend is done, per se. It just means that they're probably looking for a bit more of a value pullback. The problem is the value pullback has already kind of been exhausted. On crude oil as well, basically did the tick. So if it's going to pull back, can we really rely on this? I mean, maybe initially, you know, but if they don't hold there at the 79.40s pretty much immediately like they have been before, then there's a chance that we could rotate down to a confirmed POC, which would be over here at 77.58. Oops. So, I mean, that's the thing, you know, we've got the support at 79.40. If they can dig down there, that's still a ways away. But if they lose their ground, they got a bit of a tumble underneath that. Bulls are still in charge, but how deep are they going to let it go first before coming back in? We'll see. Over on the euro, they did rotate off of that new low, and then after that new low, man alive, no hesitation, screaming back to the upside. We do know that the euro has been getting absolutely obliterated on a much larger perspective. We're not just talking like 15-minute chart, which obviously has been quite bearish, but I mean, we're talking huge daily chart, way out there type time frame here. If we go to the euro, is it the E? Is it the 6E? For F's sake. Euro, I'll just do Euro USD, whatever. Fantastic. Euro USD, jeez. So when we're looking on the daily perspective and we zoom out very far, I mean, we're not talking small zooming out here, we're talking a really far way. we can see the tipping point that the market's resting on right now. I mean, this downtrend hasn't been short-lived. This thing's been going on for a long time. Tried getting a bear wedge here, couldn't work, widened out a little bit, that resistance held nicely, and then they kind of transition off of that resistance. After that resistance is played out, we can kind of see, you know, this obviously isn't holding nicely off of the tops. The tops are a mess. And a lot of times when that's the case, the market will hold the bottoms. So if we transition this off to the bottoms, and we can ask ourselves, does it seem like this is holding a little bit better? And initially, you know, had we drawn it off of the top, transposed it down, we have a nice little bounce there. When it came down, the support didn't hold for very long. They did bounce, but came back, resistance, resistance, resistance. Sellers finally got a new low just to rotate up and inside retest the channel. I mean, you know, there is definitely some substance for the sell side to try to get this to go a lot farther down in the big picture. A lot farther down from a value pullback would be down to the 1.1s. I mean, that's huge. But, right, from the bullish perspective, we can also see that if we drag across some volume from the bottom to the top first, we demonstrated a lot of sell-side resistance initially here. And we can say sell-side resistance because of the response. We know that they followed through. But what just happened, right? If the sellers were going to take this back down again, they should have defended. They never hit their stops. Their stops are still safe. And now we're back down into profitable territory. The shorts, in my opinion, at least, look like they've been challenged, but now they're back in the green again. That would tell me, at least, that first objectives to the downside would make a lot of sense to start measuring out. If they were entering short off of there, and they had actual risk calculations, let's just say off of the top, with a first scalper's objective of about 0.5 to 1, what do you want to know? Where the low is right now. These things don't happen for coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences. No, sir. No, sir. So the fact that we're bouncing off of the scalper's 0.5 to 1 target to the downside would tell me that a lot of sellers were probably short. They were built in heavily short, probably shorted more, took a lot of targets on the way down, re-upped into the position, which didn't work really in their favor, but still rolled down, were now on their targets, or at least their 0.5 to 1 targets. Now, that doesn't mean that we should give up all hope for the sellers, but what that does mean is that they need to break a new low for proof. If they can break a new low, then we're probably going to the 2 to 1s, 3 to 1s, and those are down at the bottom. Until we break a new low, though, we've got some issues. Because the bulls might also want to be holding this up. If we look at the flip-flop of volume from the top all the way down to the bottom, we can see what the market might want to be pulling back for. So I think sellers have a little bit more room, but really, I mean, this is a pretty hot spot. If the longs are going to defend it, that's their spot right there. And if we look at the nearest volume, since this is all basically just a wedge, we can go from the bottom to the top. And we can see that in the near term, the sellers are attempting to take over. It's the same thing that happened over here, by the way. Like rinse and repeat. That continued down for quite a while. And maybe that's the grind that we see down into this lower structural support. Once it gets down there, though, that's when things get a little bit questionable. So from the big time frame here, we've got just huge, massive zones, right? This is like swings that you could be holding on to for years type zones, okay? These are major areas. And this is where swap traders, if you're unfamiliar with what swaps are, they're, to simplify it overly, it's like dividends for currencies. It's massively oversimplified, but if you want to look more into it, you can. But effectively, this is where a lot of traders will try to buy to hold for those swaps, and then as soon as they're able to, put their stops at break even and just ride it. Let the swap pay for itself, right? You get the initial profit out of the trade, put the stop at break even for the rest, and hold on for the next decade, and just let it pay swaps over and over and over and over and over again. Sometimes you might pay negatives, but you know what I mean. That's kind of the idea. A lot of long-term type traders are coming in on these huge pullbacks. These are titans of pullbacks, right? These are big. So looking at the 15-minute chart obviously doesn't do it justice. The overall trend is still technically down. The overall previous confirmed trend, however, has been broken. The previous confirmed trend prior is up here, which has not been broken. So as far as a trap continuation goes, this is the spot. Over on Bitcoin, the perpetual motion machine to the upside hasn't stopped. Keeps on trucking. Really, really strong bullish momentum to the upside. Still really no pullbacks, but they did take some notes, right? They did take some notes. They knew that they had to at least get something going, and they got that little bit of a vindictive trap. Took some notes from NASDAQ, I guess. If we look at the overall major swing, though, we can see that they have not broken down. If we look at all of the swings underneath, the previous confirmed there, we also had a previous confirmed, technically here. So that is the one that got pipped. And then they came back and re-upped anyway. It's like, nah, we still want that one. Thanks. One big thing to obviously note here is the bullish continuation, for the most part, is still relatively strong, but we are bouncing off of some resistance. We've got some trouble. In a top-weighted settlement, that doesn't make me feel great. I really do not like top-weighted settlements. They freak me out. Especially when we're opening up underneath them. I say opening up. It doesn't really have an open, but you know what I mean. Now, for the Ethereum market, Ethereum is pushing up to new highs, really aggressive rotation back up, and we're breaking out. So this is kind of where Bitcoin is. Ethereum has already rallied above it. We'll have to wait and see what they want to do. For the most part, similar situation, except for the fact that Ethereum did not have a swing trap. So, back to the days of old, it seems. No swing low traps for Ethereum. All right. Taking a look at what's going on so far today. I mean, the market's been just kind of straight up. It hasn't really done much else. Really, I guess the cycle... Where do you even start the cycle? I mean, it's just gross. That's 4:30 going into 6. I mean, it started midway up. It's just so awkward. It feels like this needs a big pullback to kind of reset things. It's just incredibly awkward where it is. At least on the NASDAQ. Markets don't like it when they hang out like this. Not to say that it can't keep going up. It definitely can. But when that pullback comes, look out. S&P, same thing. S&P's not even pulling back. I mean, how do we even call that a pullback? Yeah, they're just chilling out at the highs. They're not doing anything. Not pulling back, not doing anything. Where am I? There we go. So from the beginning of the session, I mean, again, it's such an awkward start. They start midway up the swing. Like, you just can't start a cycle like that. It doesn't fit. It's forcing you to use yesterday's price action as a reference point. It's not very often that happens, but in this case, it is. Like, we don't have a choice. We have to go back to yesterday, at least for now. I mean, originally that would have been like this. We had the break, 2 very strong legs up, but then the next rotation down failed, so they couldn't even get to the channel low. This thing's freaking crazy. And the only reason that I would even look at this, because this, again, this is using yesterday, it's not nothing. It definitely doesn't fit, but what happened? Why did it bounce there, right? You know, it's the little things like that that make me kind of question. Now, if that is the case, and this is an overshoot above the highs, we're still, again, it's telling us we should see a deeper correction, even if we do use previous. So, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. Eso sí que es. you're ever in a bind, just remember how to spell socks. As long as you can spell socks, it is what it is. If you have, if you don't understand what I'm referencing, when you spell socks, S-O-C-K-S, you're saying in Spanish, it is what it is. Here we sit. The S&P, man, it really looks like it wants to catch a little bit of a pop to the upside. Crude oil holding that pocket of wicks there. Oof. They've got some nice resistance. Sellers are trying to pressure back on crude. We already know that it's got some bearish resistance anyway, given what's going on. All things considered, that definitely helps them out. The index markets, man, these things are up in the stratosphere. Holy moly. Yeah, I mean, who's winning the fight, you know? I mean, it's 9:28 in about a half a minute, but looking at what's going on more recently, we had sellers maybe coming in underneath the lows a couple times, but then trapped above the highs, but then the bulls kind of fell on their face in a really strong bull bar. They got nothing. Bears try coming in underneath it, they got nothing. Bulls coming in above this, they've got nothing. Like, who? Eventually, someone's going to get screwed. You know? It's just a matter of when. And who? We'll have to wait and see. Time to summon Ace to predict, yeah. Everybody hit that 528 hertz. We got to tune in. Euro on the 5-minute looking like a pretty nice descending wedge here. Funky on the highs, but pretty straightforward. Gold, man. Gold's another one that kind of started mid-cycle. I mean, kind of. Let's just pretend that that didn't happen. Let's zoom in a little bit. Crude oil. I mean, crude oil's taking notes from gold on that little dip flip. That's crazy. Market open in 30 seconds right around the corner. All right, a little bit of back and forth. NASDAQ catching a little bit of a pulse to the upside. S&P pulling back a little bit. Now the S&P, I'm sorry, the NASDAQ pulling back a little bit. S&P catching a little bit of a pulse. Let me flip those back. Now, if the NASDAQ's going to catch back up to the S&P, we should see it start spiking sooner than later. Okay, NASDAQ catching a little bit more movement to the downside here. S&P so far pulling off of the highs. Was that a double top? Yeah, to the tick double top at 99. Sellers on crude oil following through after the open, starting to get that larger dip now. And the larger dip, I think, for here, 79.40s. Yeah, I mean, we're still like $2 away. Or it just hovers. Bulls picking it back up a little bit there on the NASDAQ, creeping it back up. We've still got 3 minutes left on the candle. To me, it looks like the sellers are winning the fight here on the NASDAQ. I mean, these batch of few candles over the last couple here, I mean... Oof, yeah, there they go. NASDAQ trying to kick it back up. The S&P never made a new low. Didn't really even pull back. The NASDAQ dipped underneath quite a few of them, though. Not a huge surprise. Good old NASDAQ. Uh-oh. Come on, Ninja. Don't be crashing now. Pull it together. Oh, no! Come on now. I think I can. No, it's stuck in frozen limbo. Unfreeze. Or crash. That's the other route. Dang. Dang it. Thanks, Ninja. Appreciate ya. 2 seconds, guys. Okay, stupid freak. I don't know if I saved any of my drawings. I normally make it a habit to, but I know how it works. Whenever it crashes, I'm almost certain I didn't. Yep. Yep, those drawings are wrong. Those aren't right at all. Crap. Okay. Two seconds. gotta get connected back up here. Serves me for switching workspaces. How dare I? All right. Anyway, don't switch to the anchor charts. Don't switch to the anchor charts. Note to self as well. My lines are wrong. So I have to remember that I can't look at these red and orange lines. Those are irrelevant to me today. Proceeds to save workspace now. Yeah, it's and you know, like I said, I normally make it a habit every single time to save my workspace, but I'll be damned if it's not Murphy sitting out in the bush, waiting, just waiting to strike. Is Ninja crashed? I know he didn't save it this time. Oh, you know, like, you SOB. It's all good. You just got to remember that that the drawings, I can't focus on them today. It's got to be price action and price action only. Back to the roots. Gold feeling a bit heavy off the top here. Sellers trying to pressure down on the NASDAQ, looking for a... the overall momentum that we've got going is obviously massively to the upside. It's just that bulls want a deeper pullback to buy into. They don't want to buy into, you know, potentially all this mess like what happened yesterday. They want to see a nice dip down, probably get into the 67s or so. Be a nice little spot of interest. The S&P finally rotating down underneath a monster of a bear bar. Jeez. Don't crash. Okay. 97 is the first 5-minute volume. I know I can trust that. And 907 is the first on the NASDAQ. No, I don't. Thanks, ads. Sorry, I'm turning on my Pi and B miners. Someone sent me a reminder. Yeah. If you need extra money, they've got ads that pay for the Pi network, though. No, actually, that's not the only two. Sorry, I lied. I do the Pi network, and B is another one, B-E-E, like a bumblebee. And then the other one is Phonium, but spelled like a phone, P-H-O-N-E-U-M, Phonium. Although that does it weekly, so you don't have to worry about the daily reminders and stuff. I don't know if they're going to be worth anything. We'll see. The Pi network seems like they're doing something. The B network doesn't look like they're doing anything. I don't know. This is just... Effectively, you just push a button once a day and you're good to go, so whatever. NASDAQ continuing back to the upside. The S&P, I mean, if this churns higher, that would be a vicious trap underneath these bears. Crude oil continuing to the downside, still looking sub-80s into the 79s as an area of interest. Gold looking for a rotation down. Starting to get a bit interesting here. Now, if that's... I just got an email from Nexo. I gotta look into it because it always... It's the fine print's like, not available for US traders, blah, 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 blah. I haven't looked much into it, but I'm getting notes that you can buy directly on the Nexo platform with a debit and credit card now? Like, through them, not through, like, some monstrous fees. That'd be sick. I'll have to look more into it. Interesting. Bulls gaining continuation to the upside on the NASDAQ. The S&P's trying to churn back, but the S&P didn't close as a trap candle. That closed as a pretty strong bear bar. Do you draw the developing POC from the swing low to the high to see where is the POC, or is it the same? So if I'm looking at a developing POC, it depends on what I'm trying to develop, a bullish context or a bearish context. If I'm looking to develop a bearish context, then I would measure from the bottom up to the top, because I would want to see what the response is from the assumed sellers, right? If I'm developing a bullish context, then you would do it the opposite way, from the bottom to the top. S&P starting to catch up. POC back up at 97. NASDAQ rifling back to the upside. No pullback after that rotation. Just a sharp V bottom. Wow. Pressuring back up towards the top. POC resting back at 906.50 now. Slightly moved, but not changed much. NASDAQ bulls will be looking for dips down into the lower 20s if they can get them. Still hovering in the 30s. Very little pullback. The bulls might be trying to get a squeeze going on here. They're keeping it pinched right up at the top. Yep, squeezing through the highs and breaking out to the next point of interest up in the 45s. S&P rotating up to the highs as well. There's not really much of a... I mean, it was either you enter aggressive on the squeeze or you just got to sit and wait. NASDAQ does not make a new high. The S&P does. Jeez. Whoa, man, they hit the high and everybody took profit. Wow. All right. That's not great for the bulls. How quickly that rejected off the highs. Man, gold looks like it's staring off the edge of a cliff right now. Bitcoin's in a nice little wedge. And here it sits. Kind of slowing down, calming down a little bit. $9.45 testing. Sellers still kind of responding off the highs, but there's not really been much of a valid pullback. I mean, they got that really aggressive snap off the top, but that's it. Sellers are trying to gain a little bit of pressure, I guess, but I don't know. I just haven't seen anything to really sink my teeth into yet. Other than that little squeeze that happened, but ugh. Bulls may be looking for another pop up here from the 36s. It's just, again, it's way up at the top. It's just kind of sitting, like the pullbacks are just non-existent. Well, the bulls are taking it, like I said, from around the 36s or so, breaking back up through the highs. I'm just not interested in buying way up in the stratosphere. I don't know. Bull push back to the highs. Big volume spike up there on the NASDAQ as well, suggesting at least initially that there was some big profit taking. Obviously. But the volume's there to show you where. We are after 9:45, so this is when pattern trading and all of that stuff starts kicking up a notch a little bit more. We've got the first 15 psychological jittery back and forth out of the way, hopefully. I guess here we sit. Oh, hey, Brad, are you still in? Are you in here in one way, shape, or form? I saw your email. It'd be easier if I just answered it vocally. I'll do that in training if you're still here. Market just kind of jerking around sideways, not really doing a whole lot. We've got the attempted move through the highs on the NASDAQ again. Same with the S&P. A lot of wicks on the top. Crude oil continuing its phasing to the downside. Otherwise, still just kind of sitting on hands at the moment. Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Then before we switch over to the extended session at 10 o'clock, I'll answer that one along with any other questions that people have. Of course, at this rate, that might not be too far away. I gotta actually have a pullback for me to be able to do anything. Not about to buy at the high. Come on now. All right, well, I guess I'll start answering the question now since things are slow and I'm still waiting for a pullback, might be for a little bit. The question was, back in the day, we were looking at crude oil buying and selling, you know, anywhere from 10 contracts, usually 10 to 12, something like that. And it was relatively consistent or relatively clockwork. The patterns would set up and it would be in, out, and kind of done. Now, remember, this is crude oil, man, how long ago now? 5 years, 6 years ago. I mean, it's been a minute since we were scalping crude oil like that. And that's one of the big things, is that the markets, and this happens for every market, and why I'm on the NASDAQ now, and in a couple years I'll probably be on a different market, is because of the fact that markets change. Their personalities change. They modify how they operate, how they move. It could be due to fundamentals globally. It could be due to news or that climate. It could be due to a lot of things. But for me, when I was watching crude oil, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, etc., it was moving incredibly well. Like, you could load up, an 800 tick, 1,000 tick chart, and you'd be able to slam 15 trades a day, no problem. Like, just phenomenal price action. But then we have the situation a couple years ago where crude oil goes to negative $40. Now, here's the thing, right? For that type of trading, like, I totally understand now, obviously. Obviously everybody knew that markets could go negative, but you talk to brokers, like, I knew it could go negative, but I didn't know it could go negative, you know what I mean? Like, they never thought they'd ever see it. But when you have a situation where a market like crude oil goes to negative $40, I can no longer trust it. I just can't. It's something that the only way that I would place a trade, and I do still throw some trades on the table, but the only way that I will ever assume a trade on anything with crude oil these days, because of that, is at full, like, on full margin, like $30,000 base margin cost is what, like, mentally I'm thinking when per crude oil when I'm looking at that. Like, extraordinarily expensive, because that's the buffer that I have to have. Why 30, 40,000? Because it went to negative $40. You got to have negative 40K to buffer that. So it's, that's the concern that I have with crude. It's not moving the way that it used to, and even if it does, that's always going to be in the back of my mind. And knowing that, that means that I'm never really going to trade crude oil the same way. Psychologically, I can't. So, because of that being the case, and a natural distrust now that's built into crude oil, every trade that I take in crude oil is effectively a swing, and it's entry, stop, and big target 3 to 1, 5 to 1, whatever, let it go. And that's about it. I don't really scalp it anymore. Now, on the other side of things, the NASDAQ, the S&P, the Russell, you've got this really, really good volatility right now. I mean, there was a period of a couple months there where it was pretty bad. But the volatility is really good, where you can, on a normal day, get 5 to 15 setups. Obviously, today it hasn't frickin' pulled back, and I'm not aggressive enough to hit the gas pedal at the top, at least today, after yesterday being off. But, that's why the indexes are the ones that are offering up those opportunities. Before crude oil, it was gold. Before gold, it was the Russell. Before that, I wasn't trading. So I mean, I don't know what was before that. But for me, at least, the cycle has been the Russell into gold, into crude oil, into, well, the S&P's always been there, to be fair. That's always been there. But then into the NASDAQ as the primary markets, just based on how they move. And if the NASDAQ stops moving like that on a consistent enough basis, or something happens where I distrust it, then I'll move again. I move to wherever the volume is and whatever offers the most reliability. The ticker was EGGS before that? Oh, okay. I didn't even know what that's before me. Dang. I wonder what the rates on that are now, huh? Oh, I know. I'm just joking. Back in the .com. So, again, it's not that there's anything wrong with crude oil as a market. I just have a natural psychological distrust now. And with that in the backing, I can't trade it the same way anymore. So you have to rotate to a different market. And that happened to land on NASDAQ, S&P from time to time. But, yeah, good old TF market back in the day. No dice on the eggs. Gotcha. We do have the bullish continuation. S&P buyers may be buying into this little inside bear bar dip, but, I mean, again, there's just nothing happening. We have the extended session right around the corner here. I'm looking at the NASDAQ while it's dipping back into this value zone here in the 940s. But realistically, the volume was traded back in the 30s. It would make more sense to see it slide farther than you'd really expect it to. I think a lot of buyers will be buying into the 40s in hopes that it doesn't slide down to like the mid-30s. And that's a more reliable zone, I think, is kind of like the mid to low 30s. Of course, it makes it down to like 38. POC shifting up to 940. Got about 2.5 minutes until we start rolling into the 10 o'clock extended session, etc. Maybe there we'll find some scalps, but so far today it's been kind of a snooze fest. Either you bought the initial squeeze breakout, which happened at 941, or there really wasn't a whole lot. The pullback that happened at 90.5 down here was effectively a twin reversal. My keyboard shortcuts aren't working now because of that NinjaTrader crash. I don't know what's going on. It's fantastic. There's that extra little pulse. Nice little dip to the downside for buyers to try to level into. Only had a chance to grab one. Alright, well, I only had a chance to grab one, but it jumped right up to the initial scalper's objective. So, okay. I would have liked to have gotten more, but then I realized my hotkeys on my keyboard aren't working now either. So we're rolling real well over here. Just doing great. Sheesh. About time to reformat the hard drive, huh? 10 o'clock right around the corner here. Got that one initial scalp. I only had the one. It's been a couple technical issues here and there this morning, but anyway, next objectives, if it does want to rally back up towards the high closes, etc., around like the 45s to 47s, and then up to the highs again. I was only able to get one. Hard drive SS. Oh yeah, for sure. Sorry, it's just that's the man. I just dated myself hard. Damn. Let me take that back. Let me rewind that. Yeah, the NVMe is going out. Gonna have to swap that. Oh boy. Reason for your one entry at that point? Yeah, so the reason why I like that zone, and it's a little bit difficult to see on the 5-minute, but you can see it reflected in the volume if you look really, it helps if I make the chart bigger, really, really close here. But inside of this move, you've got this really nice little pulse in volume, and then above that, you've got another, like, little 2 blocks, and then a space, and then it starts creeping up really aggressively. There's another little gap inside there. But what I'm looking at is for the market to pull back and continue this upward momentum. I just don't want to buy like here. You know, that doesn't sound very nice. So what I want to try to do is buy in a value area that makes sense. In the previous rejection zone was back here. If that fails, side note, the next rejection zone's down here. So if I'm looking at inside of here, if I qualify a zone of interest, now I want to create value. Where has the most value? Well, the most value is right here. It didn't quite get down there. When it pulls down, I hit buy bid. That's just where I got filled, in 100% honesty. But down in this area, when it starts dipping down in this point, and we are coming into these volume nodes of interest, those are my zones. Now, had my hotkeys been working, there would have been 3 contracts on, more so like normal, and first target, second target on the way up. My hotkeys were broken, only got the 1. We popped up to the scalper's objective, which was back to the POC. So effectively, I'm buying a dip in a zone of value that's not at the highs, that's still likely to continue in the short term. I'm not looking for a huge amount, I'm just looking for a quick little scalp initially. Now, when you zoom in, when you zoom into a faster time frame, you can see this value zone a lot more. So if we go into the faster time frame from the bottom up to the first top, you've got the initial point, which was right here. Now, if these were shorts, they didn't do very well. That didn't work. They got ran over. Right now, when they got ran over, they couldn't even get a scalper's objective, and this is a really good way to validate a true trap. Measure from the POC to the top and see, did they actually hit a scalper's target? No, they did not. That means that they are true, tried and true, all the way down to the bone, stuck. They got nothing. Okay? So now that we know that they're trapped, let's continue along, right? So let's continue that mentality. We'll go from the bottom all the way up to the next high. Where did the market come back to? Couldn't get it. Missed it. Now, maybe, realistically, if you know, again, common sense, are building into positions, they probably sold more, and they probably exited a break even if they managed it with any common sense. But from an algo perspective, algos don't have common sense. They have ones and zeros. This did not fill the algos, therefore, right, we still have to keep going with that mentality of they're still broken, they're still wrong. We keep going a little bit further. And this is where things start getting interesting, right? If we go to the next high, we have a pulse in volume, little block in volume there, little block in volume there, but then this one right there stands out aggressively, right? Look at all the big blocks in volume. There, there. We've got another one back there and there, but those are kind of the same ones. So really, I'll just get rid of that last one. And that kind of creates this zone of interest where if we look at it contextually, these are likely, at the time, bulls looking for continuation. But then, what is this? Right? What the heck happened there? Well, realistically, when the market tried breaking above the highs, where did they come back to? Rotated back off that point. That seems like a profit area. So likely, bulls are going to be looking for that deep area of interest. And if we continue this a little bit further forward, things start shifting gears a little bit. We already know that the sellers have been stuck. They've been stuck. They've had multitudes of entries all the way up. But if you bring those averages in and of themselves, they did the POC in the middle of it instead of making the math easy. But the POC in the middle of it, that's their average point of interest. That's their break evens. So when you have this continuation to the downside that's trying to get going and failing in a previous zone of structural support, I know that by entering here, I only have to risk this much. Now, again, I only had the one. Had you had more, which was the anticipation if my hotkeys worked, you can see the follow-through that I was looking for. But, you know, c'est la vie. Technical problems happen. Welcome to life. But that's why that zone of interest is so valuable, because this is the shorts that got stuck over and over and over again inside of the move, not the algos. The algos are still stuck. But inside of the move, they've gotten out. This is their re-exit. Now, you could have gotten in a little bit later, sure. I was a bit early. But I like the risk down there. I would rather enter with minimal risk. You can see why. Take it as a note for life. It's technical problems happen. But it's hard to see from the 5-minute chart alone. You've got to zoom in very, very close. Yeah, and in hindsight, you can see the trapping and everything else, which, I mean, definitely helps. But I mean, you can kind of see the goal. You just have to zoom into a 500 tick or a faster time frame to really see what was going on inside that. And I don't know, I think the video already came out, or if it didn't, it's coming out this week, spoilers. But there's a video that I did on wick pockets, and this is a similar concept. You're buying in the defense zone from the previous wick, from the 5-minute. And when you zoom in on a faster time frame, that wick is nothing more than just a range that buyers are buying the low of. But more continuation to the upside. Now that I know my hotkeys don't work, I've got my buttons ready. That's fun. Anyway, let's transition over into the extended session. Of course, yeah, definitely. So if I missed any questions, feel free to get those in. Otherwise, we'll swap over to the extended session and get that going from there, and then we can rock and roll. All right. So enjoy, rest up, have a good one, and hopefully you had a great day of trading. Hopefully you had some trades. Mine came really late in the day. Maybe the afternoon session will, or well, the late morning session will give us more scalps. We'll see. Either way, enjoy the rest of the day. Hopefully you had a great one, and we will see you all tomorrow morning. For the rest of you that are hanging out with me in the extended session, just hang out for a second, and we'll swap over, right? Have a good one. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.